can unlock any door if you only have the key.
It started with Ken Anderson. He brought in the book, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH. And Ken was adamant and just passionate about that book.
He just simply pointed to the book and said, this is a great story. And I think he liked it because it dealt with something that was a little bizarre, which was the element in the story about giving mice injections and it changing their DNA somehow so that they became very intelligent and can read. And then, what happens when they become intelligent, what responsibility follows that kind of an occasion. And so I think he was attracted to it because it had a little bit of a bite in it. So we said, well, let's go make this feature. That's a great opportunity. And so that's how it all started.
Dear, a man came by today from NIMH.
Yeah?
Yes, the National Institute of Mental Health.
NIMH was an intriguing word because N-I-M-H, what does that mean? The National Institute of Mental Health. No one knew that. It just looked like a really great word. And the secret of that great word.
When we first started at Disney, we were told we had about 6 years to learn everything to start taking on leadership roles. For me, that was a panic. I went, wait a minute, all we're doing is in-betweens and learning how to do the animation, but there's obviously a lot of other things that we have to know about. Recording, storyboarding, scripting, all the things in post-production that they take for granted now. They've done it for so many years.
So we said, well, the only way we can do this is go to your own private space, which would be your home, buy the equipment that we need as cheap as we could get it, and then just explore. And as you explored, you would find out all the lessons that they had learned over all the years.
Banjo's the cat who could not behave. He seldom did what he should.
We figured out you can take a cell that's painted on one side, you can turn it upside down, so you're looking at the reverse side. Now you have a reflection, basically. Take it out of focus and put a ripple glass between the lens and that artwork. And when we discovered it, we thought, wow, we've discovered something.
We started creating systems of how we do our things. So by the time we were financed to do The Secret of NIMH, we had certain things in place that we knew how to make a schedule, how much footage we had to do each week in each department. And so it wasn't as hard as you might think to jump out, start a company, and start a movie at the same time. And then in January, we started The Secret of NIMH and didn't even have a script. All we had was the book. In our case, Don designed the characters. Don storyboarded the entire movie himself. Don would try to write 2 pages of script a night and bring it in for John Pomeroy, myself, Will Finn, and we would criticize or we would accept.
Animators should think of themselves as actors, I would think, because if you play a role and you do not know the character you're playing, and you can't leave your skin over here and crawl in the new skin and know what the brain is thinking, what it's feeling, what it fears. If you can't do that, you can't play that character. It'll always be words and they'll always be hollow. And there's no feeling in them because there's no real connection. And this thing called feeling is very elusive. It's something we can't see with our eyes. There's little indications of it, but it's like the wind. We can't see it, but we only see the effects of it. And I think when an actor finally clues into the character he's playing, a magical thing happens. And we sense it. It's heart to heart is what it is. We sense what it is. Now to give that information or that kind of insight to an animator is very difficult because all we have is words. Unless you put him on the stage and you say to this person, why don't you act the part? Find the character and act the part. Don't be you, be somebody else. It's hard for them to understand how to do that. And unless you have the experience of that, I don't think you'll pull it off.
Dave Spafford, one of the animators, had done a home video called The People of NIMH. And he's got pictures of John Pomeroy out there with that cape that your mom made. And he'd made up his hands and put these false fingernails on to be Nicodemus. So we've got him out there in the parking lot and did the same thing over the shoulder, having him write it out. Whatever it takes to get it on the screen is our motto, just make it happen.
Once an animator, it really gets some little spark inside him turned on and says, I want to see what this feels like. You want to see what it has to have these long, strange fingers, or what does it feel like to try and move a cape, or to move a cape with anger, or hide in a cape. What does that feel like? and it's the feelings that you go for. As long as you're approaching animation technically and not with feelings, you'll always be sort of what they call a bread and butter animator. But you'll never get the great scenes. The animators had to be actors, so we went and got a really great drama coach. Brought him over there and said, would you give us lessons? And they did fairly well, and we noticed that afterwards their approach to their work got different. You know, and even something as simple as the drama coach would say, now today we're going to walk across the room one at a time, and I want you to play like you just lost your job. I want to see that in the walk. Okay, so there's a feeling now they have to put in the walk. Well, some of them hadn't a clue. And what do animators do more than anything? Walks and runs and, you know, all those things. Those are basic rules. But when he said, put an emotion on the walk, that was different than just doing a walk. When I read the book, The Secret of NIMH, the first thing I wanted to know about was the little mother mouse, Mrs. Brisby. What is she actually feeling? What's her panic about? I either have to get my little son, who can't come out of this home where they live underground in this brick, I either have to get him out of there or the plow's going to plow him up. And to make it worse, he was sick, he was in bed, he had pneumonia. So he couldn't come outside because he'd die. So she's fighting for his life. What does that feel like? I hadn't a clue what that felt like. Fighting for someone's life, that wasn't in my experience. Because most of the movie, she's going to be the worrying mom. So what does a worried mother or mouse look like? And I learned something years ago in the English department, that when you take the content of something, which is worry, and you take the form of something, and you put them together, you can never separate those two, that form and content define what it is. So we tried then to make her look fragile, look like she's very vulnerable and can be hurt easily, although she's going to fight things like tractors and, you know, big obstacles she's going to fight. She has to look like she couldn't possibly win, so frail. And then very poor as a church mouse, so her clothes wouldn't be anything.
And feminine.
And very feminine, and because we thought, one of the things with mice, and they're easy to draw by formula, is you just draw the ears, then you draw these little cheek hair and everything. Well, we took all that and pushed it up, so the ears were pushed up too. You push all the hair up so it looks like one of the movies from, we'll say, the 30s, where all the hair went up on top like Betty Grable.
Please, I'll do anything to save Timmy.
The Crow was the most fun for me. I think because I had known Dom DeLuise, and Dom DeLuise had already created this character. I didn't have to do much thinking about it. He was sort of like that. In the book, the Crow isn't a big character, and he definitely doesn't want to get married or want to mate. So we gave him a lot of things which made him very interesting to me. Like one of them is he has to find Miss Right.
I haven't found Miss Right yet, but when I do, the whole world will hear us singing.
Dom had a great deal to do with this, because he would make up things. Once he got the track you were on with a character, he would say, I got it, and then he would bring things to it that you hadn't thought of. And so gradually, the character was being created really in the sound, in the recording.
We like to storyboard to a radio track, not storyboard to the script. If it's an action sequence, Don will actually pick a piece of music that he thinks fits what that action is, and he'll storyboard to the music. But if you're going to storyboard, you want to pose the characters, get expressions on the character's face in the storyboard to fit what's going on in that dialogue.
Paul Chenard, who did the voice of Jenner. Paul, you know, he came in, he had this really deep voice when he spoke. Didn't quite get and this was just the reverse of what I've been saying, but didn't quite get who the character was, because all we had is a few drawings but no boards. So he recorded it and we just talked our way through it. He recorded it. After he then saw the animatic that we created with his voice, he wanted to re-record. He says, I can go better than you've got right there.
No taste for blood, huh? They've taken the animal out of you.
We had a saying once that the audience never knows how much the project costs. It either works or it doesn't work. But it didn't really affect our costs.
Well, no, we knew how much that we had to spend. It was 4?
Well, we thought it was going to cost $6.5 million. We were told, no, you have to do it for 5.7. And in the end, we all together, the executive producers and us, had to borrow more money on our homes to come up with another $700,000. So it ended up at something like 6.385. But we finished it very close to what we
You've
originally
kept
said it
that
would
from me
cost.
all these years. We really had to borrow money on our
Yeah,
homes.
it's like the third mortgage on each of our homes.
Jeez.
Plow is here, run your lives, run! It's moving day!
Everybody on staff lived in that studio. Little tiny 5,500 square foot building down there off Ventura Boulevard. And I mean, we expanded and rented some extra space by the end of it, but we had people in the hallways. So I mean, it was more a love of the art. We were trying to say, look, it can be done today, and it can be done economically. You know, it's about inspiring those artists around you to get it, you know. So, I mean, we didn't have a budget where we could actually do overtime, so everybody was donating their time to get it done. I mean, there was nothing to work a 110-hour week. We had 100 people that worked in-house, and we had 45 cell painters that worked in their homes. They would come to our office and pick up the work and take it home with them. And we had 4 other small offices that had 3 or 4 artists in them, and our Xerox camera was set up in a separate building. It was very crude. I mean, we did it on a shoestring.
When I was growing up, I grew up on, you know, the golden age of animation. And it was just really an amazing thing to me. And I lived on a farm and I milked cows. That's what I did. And was basically an illiterate kid from a farm in Utah, and I hadn't read a book till I got to college, cover to cover. So anyway, I knew that I was really not even in a mainstream. I was so far below what was expected, you know, of a person in the United States to learn. And I had a horse. I'd ride him into town, go to a movie, and it was usually a Disney movie, something like that. And I would go to that movie, and then I'd get up and get back on the horse and dream all the way home when I rode 5 miles back to my house. And those gave me something which was the foundation upon which I sort of built everything that I am, and what I represent, what I stand for, and what I love. And so for me, what animation came to represent was sort of like, if you will, a sparkle of hope in the middle of a dreary world, where you can go there and it's like an oasis. You can drink and you can be refreshed, and then you can get ideas. And as you get ideas, then what happens is you say, okay, fine, now that's the imaginary world, and it's really just a, you know, an escape thing. But now when I come back to the real world, I have something I didn't have before. And it fortifies me. So when I started going into animation, when I met Gary and we started building our own films, I kept thinking, you know what, somewhere out there, there's a farm kid who's milking cows, who has a horse, and maybe goes, and maybe they look at our pictures, and maybe what it's going to do for them is the same thing it did for me. And so my love for the art had everything to do with, is this a tool which will enrich somebody enough to where make them a better person, and they can, you know, be a better part of the world? I became very aware really early in my life that the world can be extremely hostile, you know, and that everybody tends to value everything in terms of what it costs, or, you know, how many people did it, or how many cells, or how many, and how the bigger the better, the number. And I don't think that's the yardstick by which you measure. If something, whatever you encounter on your journey through life, if something actually causes you to have better feelings about yourself first, and better feelings about the people around you, and wanting to actually make the world a better place, then whatever that was, and if it happens to be an animated film, then I feel really good about that, because I know that's what it did for me. So that's what pushes me in the art. That's why I love the art. That's why I think when it comes to putting some great production values on the screen or not, and putting the money in your pocket, I say, no. The money's not anything. The money's what we use to get it to happen, but what you're making is something that could change lives. If you can't inspire, well then, what are you doing?